Space explorers land on Mars wanting to colonize it, yet observe that this isn't whenever Mars first has had individuals on it. A party is being tossed for space travelers who will leave set for Mars the following day. There is Nicholas the terrible kid who is attempting to get laid one final time prior to leaving Woody and Blake the main wedded couple going on the mission together. Seagate and Renee the unfamiliar space travelers. And Phil and Luke, they will be going in two groups. Luke is looking out for another space traveler named Jim to come to the party. His significant other advises him to go converse with his child Bobby prior to leaving. Luke converses with Bobby, who says that he will miss Luke and asks who will peruse to him while Luke is gone. Luke says that he will peruse the very book in space each night that Bobby will peruse, and in a manner they will peruse the book together. Jim shows up and joins the party, and everybody is glad to see him. After the party, Jim, Woody and Luke are living it up when Jim specifies a lady named Maggie, and everybody turns out to be truly miserable. The discussion among Jim and Luke uncovers that Maggie was Jim's better half, and furthermore, as space traveler Jim and Maggie longed for going to Mars and burned through for their entire lives pursuing it anyway. When the opportunity arrived, Maggie became sick and Jim pulled out from the Mars program to deal with her. Maggie at last died. Luke says that Jim and Maggie have the right to go to Mars more than anybody, and he is disturbed that they will not get to. Jim says it's okay, yet when Luke leaves, plainly he is vexed. 13 months after the fact, the group of Luke, Renee, Sergey and Scratch has arrived at Mars. One of their wanderers has recognized an uncommon mountain, and upon examination they saw that the mountain has a sparkling top. They expect that it's ice, and under the mountain could be an entire water save. They send the message to World Space Station, where Woody, Terry, Phil and Jim are available. They told the station that they will go out to investigate the surprising mountain. As Luke and the group arrive at the mountain, they hear a bizarre transmission in their headsets. They utilize a radio wave radar to concentrate on the mountain, and the readings say that the mountain is metal under the residue, not ice. Luke says there should be a mix-up and advises them to draw the radar nearer and utilize more ability to get a precise perusing. As they do that, an extraordinary energy beat emerges from the mountain and every one of their instruments quit working. Then a twister begins framing that sucks all that in. The cyclone moves like a conscious being. It sucks in and kills Sergey, Renee and Scratch, yet Luke makes do. After the cyclone settles, a monster metal face is uncovered where the mountain was. Back on the World Space Station, a crisis meeting is called on the grounds that the extreme energy beat from Mars has been distinguished, and after that practically all transmissions have been lost. A video transmission is gotten that scarcely works yet shows an exceptionally harmed Circle conveying that everybody in his group is dead, and something went after them. Woody attempts to persuade the commander of the World Space Station to send a salvage mission for Luke, yet the skipper says that Luke could currently be dead and they have not a chance of knowing whether going to Mars is protected on the grounds that every one of the transmissions have halted. Phil says they can get data sent from one of the Saturn tests flying near Mars and plan their central goal in like manner, and the chief concurs. Woody lets the chief know that the mission will possibly work assuming Jim flies the boat, since he has invested the most time preparing to go to Mars, and him and Maggie were the ones who planned every one of the Mars mission plans. Commander is hesitant from the start yet ultimately concurs of, while later the team of Jim, Woody, Terry and Phil is approaching Mars. Phil is making DNA out of confections and Jim shows up and eats his treats. Woody lets Jim know that the Saturn test will be flying near Mars in a couple of hours, giving them the data they need to land. The Saturn test shows pictures of 3 graves close to the headquarters of the past group. Phil thinks this implies that Luke is alive, yet Terry says it simply implies there was nobody left to cover him. They take a gander at the site where the energy beat came from, and it is as yet producing similar heartbeat. They believe it's an issue with the test. As they are getting ready to enter Mars, miniature meteoroids begin hitting their boat and make openings where the air begins spilling from. Woody seals up the openings from within and the outside with the assistance of the group, yet they don't know that the meteoroids have likewise harmed their gas tanks. As they start their send-off into Mars, air fuel spills out, and when they shoot the motor there is a blast, obliterating their boat. They must choose the option to get out into space in only their suits fastened to one another. They go for the gold module and circle around Mars. From the past missions, it's farther away from them than they determined, so Woody concludes that he will take a catching weapon wire, utilize all the fuel in his fly pack and fly max throttle at the refueling module, binds the wire to it. This will give the remainder of the pack an opportunity to arrive at the module securely. He endeavors the move and figures out how to tie the wire yet overshoots himself and is left abandoned in space with no fuel in his jetpack. Terry is crushed and says they need to safeguard Woody, yet Jim and Woody both know it's unthinkable in light of the fact that not a single one of them have sufficient fuel in their stream packs. Terry endeavors the salvage at any rate, yet Woody advises her to go back and forth back before she runs out of fuel, and is abandoned too. She endeavors to bring Woody back utilizing the hooking firearm, yet the wire is somewhat excessively short to contact him. Terry says she will draw nearer and attempt, and once more Woody acknowledges she will commit suicide attempting to safeguard him, so he eliminates his cap and forfeits himself, so she stops Jim. Terry and Phil figured out how to land the refueling module on Mars. They arrive at the headquarters of the past mission. They see as a large portion of the hardware harmed yet reparable, which implies they can return home with it. Jim observes that plants are filling in the trial nursery and is stunned by this. Luke shows up behind Jim and assaults him. Luke is not doing so great and thinks Jim is a pipe dream, yet Jim persuades him this is reality by letting him know that he is perusing a book that his child Bobby is likewise perusing back on Earth. Luke quiets down. He lets them know how he made do by developing plants in the nursery for a year. He educates them regarding the occurrence that killed the remainder of the group, as opposed to saying he endured. He says he was saved, and it was for an explanation. He says he was saved to sort out the mystery. Jim asks Luke what secret he is referring to, and Luke shows them an image of the monster metal face. Turns out it is the popular face on Mars, which was recently seen from satellites, however was expected to simply be a mountain. Luke says that it was set there by somebody so that them might see Jim get some information about the transmission Luke's group heard when they were near the face. Luke makes sense of that. He has been dissecting the transmission for a year, and he's sorted out that the example of the transmission in actual aspects made the image of a DNA. He says a self-representation from the creatures set the face there, a statement of their personality, a mark. Terry sees that the last sets of chromosomes is absent from the DNA, so it's not human. Later, as they are pressing for the excursion home, Jim spills a few confections, which causes him to recollect his discussion with Phil. He understands the DNA picture isn't a mark, it's a test the creatures believe that they should fill in the last sets of chromosomes to demonstrate that they are human. The face went after Luke's group in light of the fact that the radio waves from their radar were deciphered as some unacceptable response to the test. Jim says they need to reconfigure the radio waves from the radar to offer the right response, filling the last two chromosomes. The remainder of the group are reluctant, yet Jim persuades them that in the event that they don't do this, the entire mission would have been in vain, and each and every individual who passed on would have been to no end to be protected. They send the radar to the face through a wanderer. They communicate the radio wave bearing the right solution to the DNA enigma. A white entryway opens up in the face. Jim, Terry and Luke choose to go to the face, and they advise Phil to fix the return excursion module and leave when he's done, regardless of whether they are back. Jim, Terry and Luke enter through the entryway of the face, and it contains behind them breaking radio contact with Phil. They understand the environment inside is breathable air, and they remove their cap. They go into a 3D model of the planetary group. The planetary group shows Mars as a blue and green planet. It's recounting a story individuals used to reside on Mars, yet a meteor hit the planet obliterating it. A slim red being shows up from behind Luke, Terry and Jim and keeps on showing them the story. The number of inhabitants in Mars passed on in spaceships to go live in various universes, yet one of the boats was abandoned and DNA data was transferred into it by the Martians. It was this boat that came to Earth and carried the principal single-cell organic entities with it. Those organic entities ultimately developed more than great many years into current people. Life on Earth really came from Mars. The face on Mars was put there so one day individuals from Earth can return and gain where they came from. Radio contact with Phil is restored, and he lets them know a situation is unfolding and they need to get back to the module so they can return home. Jim understands that the face is truly a boat and a commencement has started for its departure. Terry and Luke start to leave, yet Jim says he will remain here. He says that this was all a greeting for them to go meet their Martian predecessors, and he will be going. It's what he was destined to do. Terry and Luke consent to let Jim go. Terry and Luke get out and scarcely come to the return excursion module in time, as Phil is going to leave. In the meantime, Jim is lifted into a little boat where he is put in a compartment. Water starts to ascend in the compartment and Jim gets stressed. He pauses his breathing, yet as the water rises as far as possible up, he understands he can some way or another take in it. He has flashbacks of his whole existence with his companions and his significant other Maggie as he is energized for the excursion to another world as Terry, Phil and Luke are leaving the Mars climate in the return Excursion module. They saw Jim's boat fly by taking him to another cosmic system. Luke takes a gander at the boat departing into profound space and wishes Jim best of luck, realizing that his companion is at last doing what he was bound to do. The end. Unfamiliar. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to this channel.